It's opportunity mixed with difficulty.
Mhm.
If you think it's just opportunity with opportunity, that's not how it works. It's more like opportunity mixed with difficulty, 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 difficulty.
Yeah.
Challenge, challenge, challenge. You don't want to do it today. How many times does it look like the door's going to shut in front of you and you're like,
Mm.
oh my gosh, what have I done? And then you keep put your head down. Napoleon, Think and Grow Rich, 3 feet from gold, right? Just keep digging.
You are listening to 5 a.m. podcast. The 5 a.m. podcast.
Good morning and welcome back to the 5 a.m. podcast. I'm your host, Michael Clausen, and we're glad you're here today. If you woke up this morning feeling like that deck is stacked against you, like that dream you've been building is hitting a wall, I want you to stop what you're doing and lock in today, because today's episode is about a lineage of American grit and a name that's synonymous with the bounce back. My guest today carries a bloodline of pure American innovation. He's the son of the late legendary Bud Ross, the man who revolutionized that sweet, sweet rock and roll with custom electronics iconic tuck and roll amps, then lost it all and built a satellite empire. Today, Andy Ross is carrying that torch forward as the CEO of American Rebel Holdings. He's also a Nashville recording artist and the disruptor behind the stand your ground ethos of American Rebel Light Beer. But he didn't get there on a paved road, ladies and gentlemen. He has lived the highs of a decade-long hit TV show and that brutal, gut-wrenching blows of losing ownership of his namesake Compound Bow Company. He is a man who knows that in this country, you are never truly out of the fight as long as you're willing to stand your ground. So we're recording right on the eve of America's historic 250th anniversary weekend. American Rebel Andy Ross, welcome to the 5 a.m. podcast.
Hey, happy to be here. Thank you for having me.
It's great to talk about that American spirit of innovation, of getting back up and crossing the Delaware when your feet are freezing and the ice flows might take you out. But we may not get to that level today in this conversation. But Andy, take us back to your kitchen table of your youth. Your dad, Bud Ross, built an empire, lost it, and then rose again. When you were a child watching him navigate those massive corporate storms, what did you see him do or say at home that taught you how a real leader handles these catastrophic risks?
The story of my father, I've got an interesting story, but it doesn't compare to my father's. He came from the hills, the mountains of West Virginia, came to Kansas when he was 14 years old, but grew up in the mountains of West Virginia, a house, no running water. He'd never had a bathroom in the house until he moved to Kansas City when he was 14. Paul was a coal miner in those mountains, and he had 5 sisters, so there was a full house, and it was tough times for sure. When my granny decided to move the family to Kansas City, she got a position with the Kansas City College and Bible School that had opened, and my grandfather, got on as the janitors. They came to Kansas, and Dad was. I've heard so many stories about how when they got to Kansas, he was kind of out of place compared to the new kids he was going to school with. And my granny was very religious. And again, I said they came from very little, and most of his clothes were made from hand-me-downs from his siblings. Unfortunately for him, he was the only boy in the family. So, but she would make their clothes, and he wasn't allowed to wear short sleeves, and he had to wear long sleeve shirts, so it was kind of different and awkward for him. But he came to Kansas City, and he got it. He went to high school, of course, and he got a job in an automobile factory in a custom shop. And what they were doing to cars back then, they were taking these hot rods and they were chopping, channeling the hoods, or the roofs on the cars, and they were also tuck and rolling this interior inside the car. And his job, when he was, 16, 17 years old, they taught him how to sew that tuck and roll material so that they could use it to do the interior of these cars that they were turning into hot rods and doing everything. So he learned how to do that. He also learned how to play music in church. and which this did not go over well with Granny, but he would play in a rock and roll band on the weekends and often got in trouble for it, but kept doing it. But he had, again, still very little means, and he had this old guitar amp, and he thought, well, I'm kind of embarrassed of this amp. But he went to the auto body shop after hours, and he tuck and rolled some material and stapled it all over his amp to make his amp look cool and different and unique, and went out and played some shows, and people would come up to him and go, man, would you do that to our amplifier? That looks great. And shortly after that, he learned how to make a speaker cabinet and push the speaker board back to where he could hide the staples behind the grill cloth. And so he made the speaker cabinets for quite some time until he had saved up enough money to actually help get an amp design. Once he got the amp design, he had a full amp and speaker cabinet, and that's when he really went to market with it. But he went from covering up an old embarrassing amp to building at one time one of the largest, if not the largest, music manufacturing
Wow.
company in the United States.
Wow, exciting. And thank God for necessity,
Yes.
so we can put those brains to work that the good Lord gave us. Now, you have your own children working alongside you now with your company, including Charles Jr. Can you tell us about maybe a recent moment in the office or on a business trip where you had to bite your tongue and step back and let that next generation make a decision?
Yeah, the situation of, one thing I wanted to say about growing up, you know, with my father credited so much of his success that at a young age, someone asked him and gave him a book called Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon
Mm,
Hill. And when I was in school and I was 12 and 13 years old, he was having me read that book. And he wouldn't
wow.
say, "Hey, do you have your homework done?" He would say, did you read your chapter today?" And that's the kind of environment that I grew up with and was so thankful for, that I got introduced to books like Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill at a very young age. In fact, my father read it I countless times. He didn't really ever stop reading it. He would read it, put it away for 3 or 4, 5, 6 months, break it out again, read a chapter a day, put it away for 3 or 4 or 5 months, break it out again. And so, that was a real blessing for me. Back to your question about my children working at American Rebel. So I live in Nashville. Um, I've been here 17 years. The music keeps me here. I'm recording my fourth album as we speak, and
Nice.
the band's here, the tours roll out of here. And my four children are still in Kansas City, and they do work at American Rebel. Two of them do. And the third one is now doing his internship at American Rebel as he's about to graduate KU.
Nice.
So right at the moment, I've got three of them there. But American Rebel is a publicly traded company. There are many arms to American Rebel, and they work in Kansas City at our safe showroom, kind of on the safe side. Cole's now kind of came into the beer side, handling the merch and setting up events and races and things like that. But they
Nice.
all thankfully have other bosses other than me. They don't work directly under me. So
Good.
and I'm very thankful for the people that work in my company that have put their arms around my kids and made sure that they get treated like any other employee. They start in the warehouse. They're doing Cole. We just had the National Beer Wholesalers Association trade show in Vegas. He packed up the booth, put it in the van, drove 2 days out to Las Vegas, sets the booth up. And, he's doing all the stuff that I did when I was a kid. And I'm real appreciative that there's some buffers in between me and
That's
them.
good.
And so they don't report directly to me,
That's
thankfully.
nice. Yeah. Well, and I was thinking of the family code, and at vampodcast.com/shop, you'll find what we have there as think it, speak it, see it. And going back to that, like such a formative book of Think and Grow Rich by
Yeah.
Napoleon Hill. And man, to even to think of my experience with that book and to hear your story of it and thinking of that family code, it almost sounds like your dad was saying, here's a non-negotiable for our family values. Can you
Yeah.
talk maybe a little bit more about whether it was what your parents were trying to put into you with that book or what you took away from that book that is part of the family code now.
What you know, you're right when you said non-negotiable. I never really thought of it that way at the time, but it was non-negotiable. If I wanted to go do something on the weekends or I needed something, it was that was in his mind my homework assignment. Have you mowed the yard and have you read your chapter today? And
Yeah.
the first time I read it, maybe even the second time I read it, not all of it made sense to me, and I wasn't reading it because I had some idea or project or business in mind. So I didn't really have something to relate it to other than schoolwork, and just
Hmm.
normal life at
Yeah.
14 years old. Um, it was later, the third time and the fourth time, and when I started to be an entrepreneur and I'm reading it and I start seeing it, lay out in front of me. Um, that it really, really hit home. And I know for a fact that when I was reading it the third or fourth time, that if had I not read it the first and second time, I
Yes.
wouldn't have got from it what I got from it. And then,
Yeah.
after a while, it seems so simple. You look at the chapters and you're like, well, yeah, this doesn't everybody think this way? And the answer is no, because they haven't had the experience or maybe read that book. And there's
Hmm.
many other books out there.
Yeah.
I this one is special to me because it was special to my father, and he contributes it to him being able to be an entrepreneur at 17, 18, 19, 20 years old. You have to remember he went from a house with a dirt floor to being a millionaire in his 20s.
Yeah. Wow.
So it was quite a change for him, and he was never doing it for the money to begin with anyway. He really wanted to make great guitar amps. He loved music, and he didn't even dawn on him. He would tell a story about how his one accountant one day told him that he was a rich man, and he's like, "I don't understand. We only made this much money. I don't know if that makes me a rich man." He said, "Well, Bud, the value of your company would sell for a multitude of that, and the growth curve it's on. I mean, you're." And he wasn't even thinking that way.
Hmm.
So there's so many principles in there, uh, and they don't even have to apply to business. It doesn't even have to apply to entrepreneurship.
Hmm.
It can just apply to your
Yeah.
life or, growing a garden or working in, you have a hobby working in a wood shop and you just want to, be the best you can be. And, it all comes down to some discipline and, just that entrepreneurial spirit that you have
Right.
to have and applying every chapter is valuable.
That's right. And as you're talking, it makes me think of standing on the shoulders of giants and the people that have gone before you. And somehow your dad found that book, and the person that introduced him to it found it somewhere along the way. And the first time our listeners are going to hear this episode is for the weekend of the 4th of July, and that being the 250th anniversary celebration of America. I want to ask you this because I love history. Who were some of those names from America's founding that maybe propelled you on or gave you an example of keep going despite the pitfalls and the difficulties?
I can't wait for you to hear this new song I've got coming out on the 15th of this month.
Okay,
It talks about the journey of the 250 and when you get to the chorus it talks about, but the best is yet to come, right? I mean, we're
hmm,
just getting started. We
just getting
we think
started.
250 years is a long time because, we're only on this planet for, 70, 80 years, 85 years if we're lucky. So we think 250 is a long time, but 250 is not that long. And so, I think this country is just getting started. History can teach you so many things, and the one thing that it teaches me that I think this country does better than any other country, there's a multitude of things I think we do better than any other country, but one in particular is this country provides opportunity, and that
Yeah.
opportunity is mixed with difficulty. All opportunity comes with difficulty and challenges and days that you want to give up and you don't always get it right the first time, and sometimes it takes many tries to get the skills to be successful, but this country will let you have multiple opportunities to try. It's
Hmm.
not easy to decide, hey, I'm going to host a podcast
Yeah.
and compete with other podcasts, to write a song, to have a plumbing business or be a contractor. Anything that you take on is opportunity, but
Yes.
it does come with difficulty, and so many people throughout history, it's a shame, even someone who tries to figure it out, it's just a shame that more people don't actually know the the difficulty people went through to have
Hmm.
the successes. I
Yes.
mean, we hear about the business that started in the garage and became successful, and we know people had to learn how to farm, and they built a railroad system across this country, and the industrial revolution and tech world. We lead the world in tech. I mean, we see the things that we see that happened in our lifespan or shortly before our lifespan, but we don't
Hmm.
really see the obstacles and difficulties and the challenges from 150, 200 years
Hmm.
ago when they founded the country. I mean, that was a very risky thing, breaking off and
Yes.
trying to, and founding a new
That's right.
company. A country. We don't even understand what they went through. So you can learn
Yeah.
so much from history. But the one thing about history teaches you that holds true today, and I believe it's going to hold true 100 years from now, is it's opportunity mixed with difficulty.
Hmm.
If you think it's just opportunity with opportunity, that's not how it works. And,
That's right.
it's more like opportunity mixed with difficulty, 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 difficulty. Challenge, challenge, challenge. You don't want to do it today. You plow
Yeah.
through. How many times does it look like the door's going to shut in front of you, and you're like, "Oh my gosh, what have I done?"
Yes.
And then you keep put your head down. Napoleon, Think and Grow Rich, 3 feet from gold, right? Just keep digging.
Yes. Oh man. Yes, when I heard that story of those people giving up instead of and missing out on that treasure and I was as you were talking, I was thinking of John Cougar Mellencamp and that Ain't That America from Pink
Yeah,
Houses. And what a song, ladies and gentlemen. We're talking about music. And Andy, you've poured your life and your passion, speaking of difficulties, into your own name in the brand of your bow company. Can you take us back to that, maybe metaphorically, to that physical room you were in or the phone call you received when you realized that this obstacle was kind of hitting you in the face, and but then you, whether you built some armor or you stood and rose again or stood your ground, that
yeah.
was needed to build American Rebel.
Well, in hindsight, I guess what I could tell you in hindsight, because you got to be responsible for your actions. That's
Hmm.
that's a hard lesson to learn.
Yeah.
So I guess the story I'll tell you isn't the story where I necessarily got hit in the face. It's where I went wrong. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
I did it, and what happened was when I had the bow company, but I also had the TV show Maximum Archery
Right.
World Tour,
Yeah.
and the what we couldn't get anyone on TV. The hunting programs were very, very popular back then. I'm talking
Hmm.
2005, 2006, and the ratings were amazing. Bow hunting shows, especially, and I couldn't get Michael Waddell and Lee and Tiffany. And I mean, although they're friends and they were very nice to me, I couldn't get them to shoot my bow. They just happened. They already had contracts with other established bow companies that they've had for years, Ralph and Vicky and Drury's, and they already had the Primos guys. They already had Hunter Specialties. They already had contracts with Bowtech, Hoyt, Matthews, Bear, and so I thought, well, why don't I film some of my hunts? We'll make a DVD and we'll put them in a box. And we got a hold of a camera guy that filmed part time for the Drury brothers. And he went on 4 hunts with me, and 5 hunts, 4 were successful. And we made a DVD and put it in a box. Every time somebody'd buy a bow, they'd get a DVD. We'd hand them out at trade shows. And it was the only TV media that showed my bow because we didn't have any of the hunting celebrities endorsed. So I ended up getting a phone call because that DVD landed on the desk at the Outdoor Channel asking me if I wanted to do a show. They're like, "Hey, you're pretty good at this. Do you want to do a show?" We and so we came up with a name and put a show together. So what happened was the show became successful, very successful. And the one thing I could do that made me a little different from the other TV shows was I thought it was important to film the reality of the travel, going in and out of a bar and almost getting in a bar fight in some small town in Colorado and trying to find places to do laundry and crossing borders and getting tags and the obstacles and just being on the road. So our show was kind of like the first reality show where we showed the travel and the camaraderie around it and the hunt. in the show. And that's where the world tour came from, Maximum Archery World Tour, because we were showing the travel. We would take the name, the species, the dates of what we were hunting, putting them down the back of T-shirts like old Van
Oh,
Halen and
nice.
Journey
Yeah,
concert
I love
shirts, and
it.
kind of treated it like a tour.
Yeah.
Well, I thought to myself, I can play some music. Why don't I create some original songs for the show to have something different than everybody else was using? So I wrote "Gotta Go Hunting Blues," "Hunt Me Down," "Buck of a Lifetime," "Blood Trail on a Whitetail," "Support Your Local Wildlife," and I used these songs for the opener, the credits rolling in and out of commercials, and so I had the TV show going. Well, then iTunes comes out, file sharing comes out. Now I got
Mhm.
music going everywhere. I got Nashville calling. So I've got the bow company that's going great. I've got the TV show going great. And I've got the beginnings of the music career. And I probably, when you want to talk, I'm trying to talk to you about
Mhm.
where I may have went wrong.
Yeah.
Obviously, the TV show had a lot of fanfare around it. The music had fanfare around it. It was the out of the three things to do, playing music was the funnest.
Yeah.
The best time hunting, going bow hunting and filming TV was amazing. And staying home and running the business came in a close third. So when I had another company, one of those large companies come along and want to buy Ross Archery, and they said, "Well, we'll buy it. We'll give you X, and then we'll keep you on because you're still the face of it. You keep doing the show. You keep shooting the bow. You go do you. You go be Andy Ross. You're Andy Ross. We'll buy it, and then." We're going to sponsor you not only with back to your bow company, we're going to sponsor you to our accessory company, our arrow company, and, so I had all this sponsor money coming in. I had a payday and I had a monthly, uh, an annual salary, if you will, that reflected around the bow sales that was more money than I'd ever made owning the company, plus
Mhm.
the sponsorships. And I didn't have to look for sponsors for the show anymore. I mean, it was a dream situation. And where it turned out to be too good to be true, what I didn't know was this company had borrowed a lot of money from another company, not an archery company, but a company in the outdoor space.
Mm.
Apologize, I don't want to throw names.
No, no, that's fine.
And when they couldn't pay it back, that company acquired them, just took them over and acquired them. The owner of that company had his own TV show and his own thing, and he just decided that, why are we pouring all this money to this Andy
Mm.
Ross guy when we've got
Mhm.
our own show and our own thing and our own people that we sponsor, and Andy's out playing music and running around and running amok, and he didn't
Yes.
see my celebrity as he saw it more as working maybe against his celebrity than finding me an asset.
Yeah.
So, I just got a letter in the mail, and a certified letter saying, we're no longer doing this, and this. And
Right.
um, so I sued him and won, but I'd already moved to Nashville. I'd already made "You Ain't Seen Crazy Yet," the first record, and I was starting to play a lot of music. And what I won in the lawsuit wasn't what I wanted. What I won was they gave me the company back. But here's the problem. The damage had been done in the marketplace of the rumors flying around, the dealers. The I didn't even hardly own a screwdriver, let alone a building or any equipment. And I'm living in a high-rise condo in Nashville, Tennessee. I don't have any way to make the bows. So I tried to regroup and get everything together, and by the time we would have been able to get the bows back on the market, it just came out from under my feet.
Mm.
So
Mm.
the lesson to be learned was I probably went for the shinier toy prematurely, and probably should have said, you know what, I'm not going to do this deal with Ross. I'm gonna stick with what got me here and
Mm.
keep my head down, and maybe only done 6 months of TV instead of a year.
Right.
Didn't chase the music as aggressively as I did. Kind of went for that shinier toy maybe a little early. So I could be mad and bitter, and I was for a while. But if you don't put it back on yourself and just say, hey, here's where I think I screwed up, and learn from it, then you know
Yeah.
shame on you. Shame on me if I can't do that. So
Right.
tough lesson to learn. Don't always
That's
go for the shinier toy.
that's right. And there is a theme though that I'm picking up from from my research and preparing for this and our conversation now, and it's that you kept going. And there maybe is a person listening right now who is maybe staring at their own, I don't know, whether it's a roadblock or wreckage or obstacle, maybe a business failure or a career
Yeah.
transition. Was during this time, do you remember a moment where you were there too, of like, man, what do I do now? And you said, you know what, I'm going for broke, or I'm putting it all on Andy. If I'm on
Yeah.
if I'm on the roulette table, man, I'm a square. I'm putting everything down on me.
Well, in hindsight, I wish that back then I'd have been, you know, my faith would have been more important to me back then as it is today, because in hindsight, I look back and I say, God actually gave me what I wanted and gave me all the tools to get what I wanted, and seemed like the world was crumbling around me, but I just buckled down. I put out another record. I was able to sustain myself, and because I had a few dollars in the bank, but I had a lot of bills too. I mean, I still had four kids to go through college. They three of them went to KU, one went to K State, and I had a lot of bills and a lot of overhead. But I put out the Time to Fight record in 2000. On that record was a song called American Rebel. It went viral as a patriotic anthem, landed me on
Right.
Counting Cars, where Danny built me the Second Amendment muscle car. He
Yeah.
called the episode Rocked and Loaded. That really kicked the song into high gear. And then I met entrepreneur Corey Lambrick out of Arizona today, my dear friend, and Corey had just brought Smith and Wesson back to the U.S. He had been a part of a lot of public companies. And you talk about an entrepreneur. I mean, he and I was a hunter, but he hunts elephants. He's a big game. In the business world, right?
Right.
And I had an opportunity to meet him. I was out west, and a friend of ours said, "Hey, if you're out there, you got to meet Corey. He's real like-minded, big Second Amendment guy. He'd like to meet you, and you'd enjoy meeting him." And we talked a little bit of business and shop, and we were having a couple beers at a place, and he said, "Man, American Rebel song." He said, "That's really cool. It's a really a patriotic anthem." And I said, "Thank you. I've got the rough cut of the video on my laptop if you want to see it." And he said, "Sure." And I showed it to him. We played it a couple of times, and he stood up and with two fingers started pounding the table. And he said, "Andy, that's a brand." He said, "American
Mm.
Rebel's a brand. It's America's patriotic brand. Your song is the demo, I'm sorry, your
Right.
song is the mission statement for the company." And, he said, "I've been involved in big brands, including, executive vice president of Smith and Wesson. I understand brands, and I'm telling you, this is a brand."
Wow.
And that day, that was in 2015, American Rebel was formed. And I still got to go out and play music. I still get to do the things I love and bring awareness and advertising and marketing to the company. And we were back off to the races. We launched our concealed carry clothing, backpacks, coats, jackets. We're
Right.
very big into gun safes. We bought our OEM manufacturer, American Rebel Safes did, which is Champion Safes. A year and a half ago, we introduced America's patriotic, God fearing, Constitution loving, national anthem singing, stand your ground beer. So, I'll take lessons learned, and, you keep going. A dog won't bark at a parked car. So you got to
Right.
keep moving. And
Yes.
sometimes I feel like I kind of landed on my feet. When I built Ross Archery, it felt like I did something because I wanted to. I enjoyed it.
Mm.
I had the entrepreneurial spirit. I was driven, and those things too here at American Rebel, but it almost became out of necessity because I had my children, I had my overhead going, I had so many commitments and obligations that when you have to be successful versus want to be successful, it's different.
Yeah.
You got more on the line than just, hey, if this don't work, I'll find something else to do. It's a different amount of, I don't know if stress is the right word, but a different amount of
Yeah.
weight.
Right.
And thankfully, producer Doug Grau, who produced my music, pitched in, and Corey Lambrick, who I said I give him so much credit for all that we have going and all we're doing. I had a couple other people to help me, push this boulder up the hill. But yeah, it was some real, and still is to this day. It's very challenging on the business front, but man, I'm just thankful. I'm blessed. I'm kind of on the other side of it now. I got my
Right.
fourth child is graduating college, so they're kind of off on they're doing their things, and so I'm looking forward to the next couple
Mhm.
of the next 20 years and getting to be on the fun side of this things. But truly, truly blessed. And I just want to say this because I mentioned faith. Even when you look back in Napoleon Hill and Think and Grow Rich, and it talks about tapping in, seeing it and affirmation and all. I mean, isn't that just prayer? Isn't that just talking to God? Some people will say, well, I got to connect to the energy. Well, I believe people are connecting to the right energy. I just call it the Holy Spirit. If you want to
Yes.
call it energy, call it energy. If you want to call it, you know, the Holy
Yeah.
Spirit, call it the Holy Spirit. I'm not here to preach today.
Yes.
There's so much in the Bible that's in
Mhm.
that book too. It may not just be call it out on the nose. So
Absolutely.
anyway,
I
it's
love it.
been a lot of fun, and I'm really looking forward to the next 20 years. My music's doing better than ever. Streaming's an interesting thing to navigate because we have
Mhm.
a multitude, hundreds of times more people now listen to my music than ever, but the revenue from it is thousands of times smaller than when we were selling hard copies. So
Yes.
that's why you've got to build things around it, and thankfully, with the help of some great people, we built a brand around the music.
Right. That's wonderful. And I was just recording a conversation with Petra lead singer John Schlitt earlier this week, and they've got a new album coming out. The only reason I mentioned that is because they're actually producing hard copies of their music. And I was telling John, now I've got another LP to add to my
Yeah.
collection
Well, vinyl's making a
downstairs.
comeback.
Yes.
Vinyl's making a
Oh
comeback.
yeah.
It'll never move to replace, digital and
Yes.
streaming, but
Oh
for the
man.
people who like to put on a record and hear the
Yep.
record and read the artwork and stuff, it's
Yes.
making a comeback. We're definitely going to put this this new I still call them all albums because even though you
Yes.
release 13, 14, 10, 12 songs onto digital, it's still an album of music. The delivery system is just digital,
Yeah,
but it's
that's right.
still an album of music. But we're going to
Absolutely.
put this album actually on vinyl and be
Oh,
more of a,
good.
also a textbook album.
Awesome. I'm gonna get one of those as well because I think back to my childhood. My parents would come home with a with a vinyl record, and you'd open it up and you'd look at the sleeve and you'd look at the artwork
It
and
was
the
so
text
much
and
fun.
so much fun. And
Over and over and over and over again.
over, yes, yeah, you just keep looking at it. Better than reading a cereal box, as we
Yeah.
all did back in the day. But I want to circle back to what you were saying about the energy, the power of the Holy Ghost, and Napoleon's work in that book. And that I love to read old books, and I talk about that ad nauseum on 5 a.m. podcast because I think other people should read old books too. And I was reading this very old translation of Mark 11:24, and what a picture in that verse of it. It says in the Wycliffe Bible, if you speak it out, if you call to it, it will come running to you. And
Yes.
we don't have enough of that positivity in our current world.
But that's also it. Napoleon Hill says,
Hmm.
take your goals, write it down, hang it
Yes,
on the refrigerator, read it twice a day. I
that's
mean,
right.
that's the same thing.
Yes,
Speak it out loud. It's the same thing. They took the biblical
yes,
elements out of it
that's
and
right.
put it in a how-to book, if you will.
Yeah,
But
that's
yeah,
good.
it's a lot of
I
there's a lot
love
of
it.
cross references there.
That's right, and I was makes me think of, write this down. I was in Nashville in February, and the young guy that was our driver had this, George Strait playlist, and so I was like, "How about write this down? You got that one? That's good. We gotta we gotta keep doing that." But I wanna ask you about, I see this as your fight against the giants when you launched the beer brand. That beer industry is dominated by massive multi-million dollar conglomerates. And then here you are, paint a picture for us of what it was like that first time you walked into a major distributor or maybe a retail meeting to pitch American Rebel Light Beer. How did that go for
Yeah.
you? And I'm sure you probably felt like an underdog in that situation.
Well, we've had a lot of challenges. I'll go to your question. The one thing that everybody told us we couldn't do was
Mm,
get the big distributors. They're like,
wow.
they won't even talk to you. You're absolutely crazy. You cannot get the distributors. You're just it's a one in a billion chance. One of the easiest things that we have going for us at American Rebel is getting the distributors. In fact,
Mm.
we're kind of in an allocated situation. 95 or 98% of all of our distributors are not only distributors, but they're the largest distributors in the territory. 98% of them are either Anheuser-Busch distributors or Coors Miller distributors. Getting distribution for our beer, um, for whatever reason, they gravitated to the marketing, they gravitated to the packaging, and then they loved what we put in the can. It's the only all natural light beer on the market, no corn syrup, no rice extract,
Wow.
and it's a great tasting product. It's great liquid. So getting distribution, what we the challenge now is just because they distribute it and put it into a place, let's just say a bar, doesn't
Mhm.
mean anyone's going to come up and ask for it. Like the bartenders are not going to go.
Yeah.
Someone says, "Hey, can I have a Coors Light?" They're not going to go. "Oh, but you should try Bud Light." "Oh, you don't want
Yeah.
the Bud Light, you should try a Rebel Light." They're not. They just want tips for ringing the cash register,
That's
and
right.
the bar, if they do buy a Rebel Light, that just means they sold one less Coors Light. They're not going to sell more beer. They're just going to sell some different beer.
Yeah.
So the retail outlets don't have a lot of motivation. So getting the distributors wasn't hard. Now we got to, now we work on our focus is like, okay, now what do we do to get sell through? How do we promote it so people will go into the bar and ask for it? Because the bar owner doesn't care what beer they buy. They make the same amount
Mhm.
of money on any of them. They don't care what they order. So that's a challenge. The other thing, two other points of challenge. One, because we are America's patriotic brand, it does say right on the can, America's patriotic, God-fearing, Constitution-loving, national anthem singing, stand your ground beer. And we did come out about a year and a half or so after the Bud Light incident. So everybody thinks that we did this in reaction to the Bud Light incident.
Mm.
What the Bud Light incident, everybody thinks helped us. It actually did not help us because 10 other companies tried to do what we were doing
Mm.
that we already had in the works because they thought it was low hanging fruit. And the distributors in the marketplace says, "Oh, you're just one of those other companies that is trying to do that to play upon the stubbing of the toe of Bud Light." And we got put into a category and it actually created competition for us in this space. Now what we're seeing is most of them have disappeared, and I think the marketplace is realizing, no, we're America's patriotic beer. We're for all patriots. We're not a knee jerk reaction to what happened at Bud Light. We're really in this business, and we're getting taken more seriously now. So that was one thing. The third thing I'll say about challenging, when we started, no one looked at us as a threat. Now that we've gained some traction and we're in 18 states, we're actually now in our first football stadium,
Wow.
where the
Nice.
Philadelphia Eagles play. We've gotten into that stadium this year. We're all up and down Broadway, Tootsie's, Kid Rocks, Honky Tonk Central,
Nice.
Whiskey River, Whiskey Bent, Doc Holidays, all up and down Broadway. We're in Total Wines. We're in some grocery store chains. So now that we've had some success, the companies that didn't care, we were a flea on a horse's back.
Mhm.
Now all of a sudden they're saying, "Hey, they're very, very, very small in comparison, but we are hearing their name a little more than we'd like to."
Nice.
And that can make it tough because distributors that distribute the major brands can put pressure on the venues and the bars and
Mm.
not to bring us in. And, well, we'll do a beer special on this, and this if you don't bring them in. So now we're starting to feel a few punches here and there. Again, opportunity mixed with difficulty. Success always comes with challenges, and we've kind of stepped into we've kind of got a toe in the big ring now,
Mhm.
and they don't like toes coming into the big ring.
Right.
So
Yeah. I
here
get
we go.
that. Yes. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we're talking with Andy Ross. What a great story of American resilience, business resilience, keeping your head up. We have a comment section, ladies and gentlemen. We'd love to hear from you. Share your story of stubbing your toe maybe in a dark night. Who hasn't done that? And it's the one time people for sure will call out to the Lord. Dark at night and you stub your toe on the couch. Man, what are you doing here? Wrong place, wrong time. But that's okay. The Lord allows U-turns. Am I right? But
Step on a Lego.
that's right. Step on a Lego, ladies and gentlemen. Now, one of the other things we've already talked about the Second Amendment Corvette that Counts Customs created for you, and you've partnered with Tony Stewart Racing. Love the
Yes.
race cars. Love the the expenditure. Speaking of energy, of that high octane fuel. What's the story behind the scenes at that track that maybe taught you a lasting lesson about just the sheer speed of execution in business and making those decisions?
Well, first of all, to get into the motorsports, if you look at what if you look at what the big beer companies, Coors Light, Miller Lite, Bud Light, if you
Mhm.
look at what they did to get to where they were, motorsports was a big part of their growth. There was always a Coors Light, Miller Lite, Budweiser car in NASCAR. And it's almost like somehow they've all kind of backed out of that. But that's if you want to get a playbook of how they grew, it's a lot different than how they act now. And I think
Mhm.
they're trying to please so many people. They used to put pretty girls in their ads, and now for
Yeah,
some reason pretty girls are offensive, and or I don't know what they're thinking. I still think pretty girls are pretty. but
absolutely.
but so motorsports and music, motorsports, was a part of our plan. And we had relationships through my music and my show. Tony's a big hunter, bow hunter,
Mhm.
and we got to know Tony and be a part of Tony Stewart Racing. So when Tony first acquired the NHRA drag racing team, which consisted of Leah Pruitt, who's his wife, driving the top fuel drag car, and Matt Hagan, four-time world champ, driving the funny car, we were able to get in there and have it an American Rebel car. So we're going into our fourth year. The first year, I'm sorry, our third year. The first year, we only could put American Rebel on the car because Tony still owned part of some or all of three NASCAR teams. And NASCAR
Okay.
is blanket sponsored by Bush.
Hmm.
So he, even though we were over here in NHRA drag racing, that wasn't comfortable to work with another beer company because he's over here, three
Mm.
NASCAR teams.
Mhm.
The next year, when he got completely out of NASCAR and sold those teams, he's like, yeah, if you guys want to go with, American Rebel Light on the car and the beer can on the car, have at it. So
Nice.
that's what we did. Then Tony and Leah decide to start a family, and they need to find another driver for her top, for the funny car. I'm sorry, for the drag car. And Tony's like, heck, I'll step in it for a year. I'm used to going left, but what the heck, I can
Yes,
go
right.
straight. You know,
Yeah.
so he steps in the car for a year, and now Leah's back. She's back and running better than ever. She's been top qualifier, second highest qualifier, went to the finals. We're like four races in. She's just knocking on the door of a win, and we love that she's back. And Tony's now driving with another group with Elite, and they're amazing and
Mhm.
wonderful team. So and welcoming, and we're just we're having a blast with it. But the exposure that we're getting from the NHRA
Mhm.
is undoubtedly the number one tool in our toolbox right now.
Right. Yeah. And who doesn't love those loud and fun hot rods? And you actually were able to perform live at the NHRA Gator Nationals. Can you talk a little bit about being able to bring your music, that creative side, to this
Sure.
area, business and pleasure?
Well, I've always been able to do that with the music. I mean, music moves people. It takes people to a place and time, and we're really good at writing songs that are on brand that fit what we're doing. I wrote a song that the NHRA kind of adopted and they use quite a bit called Nitro Lightning and
Hmm.
recorded. They probably play 8 to 12 NHRA races a year, not just the Gator Nationals. It is a big weekend for me, a thankful weekend, a blessed weekend, a reflecting weekend of what all's been accomplished when I go to the track and either the funny car or the drag car, either Matt or Leah, or Matt and Tony, are running the Rebel Light car. Sometimes we're on both on a weekend, sometimes one of the two, as the primary sponsor. They've got our stage up with all of our banners. They're selling the beer at the track, and Rebel Light banners are everywhere. And then they hand me the microphone and let me bring the party. And
Yeah.
I look out there, and all these people got a Rebel Light can in their hand and their hands up in the air. Yeah, it's as good as it gets.
That's so much fun. Have you ever thought with your involvement with the NHRA of the National Hot Rod Association that your dad was actually maybe got his start with building hot rods? And has this maybe come a bit of a full circle for you?
Yeah, my dad always he not only, built hot rods as a kid and
Hmm.
learned how to sew the tuck and roll material, but he always liked cars. He was a fan of cars and hot rods, all of our life. So, there's something about cars. I mean, they're just beautiful, and the
Yes.
way they're designed, and the hot rods are big and powerful and stand out.
Yes.
And so we people ask me all the time if I still have the Corvette, and I do. And then they ask me if I drive it, and I say I don't. We take it to trade shows from time to time,
Right.
and it's pretty much still in showroom condition. Probably doesn't have 200 miles on it. I keep saying every year, it's a shame not to take that thing out and drive it. It's
Hmm.
amazing, but I also don't want anything to happen to it. It
Yeah.
is my car, but it also, it's an icon of our company,
Yeah.
and kind of belongs to the spirit and the attitude of American rebels. So, it's a part of what got us here. So I'm not personally just gonna, take it
Yes.
out and see if I can get chips in it, and
That's right.
one day we'll
Totally.
we'll get it out and
I
driving around
totally
for a
get
while.
that.
But
I want to talk about your upcoming album, but before that, I have to do a shout out to all the car people. I mean, what is America
yeah,
apart from car design and hot rods? And as my good friend Marty says, Mike, you can't microwave a steak. You need that gas. You need that charcoal, and we're not
still need
using.
it.
You still need it. So thank God for Drill Baby Drill. But let's talk about your upcoming fourth album was written amongst all of this corporate growth. Can you talk about maybe some of the themes that went into that album?
Yeah, when I start to, make music. So when I had the TV show Maximum Archery World Tour, and I had these hunting songs, I had a lot of artists from Nashville, national touring artists that hunt,
Hmm.
specifically bow hunt. So I would get these calls that would be, "Hey, we'd love to be a guest on your show, and by the way, we've heard your music, and it's okay." Politely, they say, it's, but if you ever come to Nashville and you want to write, let's write one. So I came to Nashville. I was writing with the Davison brothers. I met their producer, Doug Grau, who was Nashville producer. He was
Hmm.
he was Warner Brothers Nashville. He worked and put together and produced, the records and the hits with Little Texas, God Bless Texas, Amy's Back in Austin, Kick a Little, What Might Have Been. Travis David Ball, he did the Blue Collar Comedy Tour with Foxworthy and Larry the Cable Guy and those guys. And he was working with the Davison brothers. So when I wrote a song with the Davison brothers, they said, "Hey, let's go in and record it. We'll get Doug to come in and produce it." And I'm like, Doug Grau would come produce my
Hmm.
song, and they're like, "Yeah, we wrote it with you. I mean, he's a great guy. He'll come in." So I met Doug. We did the song, and he just said, "Andy, with your audience, why don't we go ahead and make a record and an album?" And he said to me, he goes, "Hunting is this big." I don't like how far you can see it here,
Yeah.
but bow hunting is only this big. We can't do an album of hunting songs.
Yeah.
We got to do something else here. So what else are you passionate about? And I said, I'm very pro Constitution, pro Second Amendment. I love the shooting sports, very, patriotic. And you could watch the TV show and see that we were very patriotic and love our
Hmm.
country and our, support our troops and all that we do. Um, and our vibe, if you will. And he said, well, let's do that because that opens up to a wide audience
Yeah.
and on both sides of the party. This wasn't a party line choice. This was a take a big swipe right down the middle.
Yes.
And so we did, and he put me with Porter Howe, leader now of Little Texas, that was a co-writer on most of those hits. And I got with Mark Sutton, and I got with John McElroy, and wrote with Lee Brice, and just a lot of top writers, Jeffrey Steele, Brady Seals. And he was able to put me with those writers and help find my sound. Now, I came from a rock background and prefer, obviously, if you
Mhm.
grew up in my house,
Yeah.
you may be 3 or 4 years old, but Creedence Clearwater
Yeah.
is on the stereo. The Eagles are on the stereo, and then the Fleetwood Macs and the Bob Segers, and all those records were coming out and big, and so I grew up in a rock world, but Doug was in a country world, so he's like, I can't help you in the rock world like I can help you in the country world. So we found this. We call it now. It didn't have a name at the time, but we call it country patriotic rock and roll. And so I found a sound. I found
Yeah.
what made me happy, him happy, and it's country, it's rock, it's southern rock, and it's just Andy Ross music. But what
Nice.
goes in your question of what goes into it is I like to stay on brand, and writing what I love to write about is on brand. Um, and what I mean by on brand is uh, music that you would expect to hear from
Mhm.
around American Rebel too, right? Not
Yeah.
every song
Right.
is about a flag or about being an American rebel, but we stay in our lane. And
Mhm.
I'll tell you, people talk to me all the time about they think, hey, you're really good at the music. I'm really good in my lane.
Yeah.
Um, I don't know. I mean, I'm not going to win The Voice. I might not even get a chair to turn around on The Voice. I mean, but I sing Andy Ross songs better than anybody, and
Yep.
I've got a lane and I stay in it.
Nice. Yeah, it makes me think as you're talking of Johnny Reb from Johnny Horton back in the day, all those songs. My parents were huge Johnny Horton fans. Safes are meant to keep a lot of things safe, not just our firearms and those fun things, but have you ever had a story come across your desk of a customer that had some sort of jaw-dropping story about how American Rebel safe survived a disaster or a home invasion or kept a livelihood safe?
Every week. Yeah, every week
Wow.
between American Rebel Safe and Champion Safe, it's
Hmm.
either a break-in or a fire. But
Wow.
we get stories. I mean, I probably only hear 5% of the ones that come
Hmm.
into the offices there in Provo, Utah, at the Safe Factory
Right.
make it to me. But they're so common that you're just used to hearing it.
Love it. Love it.
Yeah.
That's cool. Okay, so as we're wrapping up, ladies and gentlemen, we can see by the clock on the wall, we're getting close to wrapping up here. Looking forward to those future generations of American Rebel and your family and corporation and interests. What would be a story that you would want to be able to tell as the legacy of Andy Ross?
Yeah, don't chase the shinier toy.
Yeah.
Number one, you don't want to have to do this 3 or 4 times,
Hmm.
to be successful. You should, when you find success the first time, hang on to it, and be smart with your money. If you can do that at a young age, actually becoming successful and retiring comfortably is
Hmm.
fairly easy if you just learn it at a young age. To live a little beneath your means, which took me forever to learn how to do. Not sure I'm there yet, but if you can live beneath your means and put a little away every month, even if it's a couple $100, if you start young enough, you won't have money problems. Don't let money become a problem in the first place if you can avoid it. I'm always going to tell everybody to read Think and Grow Rich, and also, I always say a dog won't bark at a parked car, so you got to move.
That's right.
This sounds really silly, but I had the conversation with my children, one of my children the other day. I wake up and make my bed, and what's the
Hmm.
big deal about making your bed? Well, it's on the list of things to do today, and you can wake up and within 2 or 3 minutes you can scratch one, check
That's
one
right.
off the list. You've gotten something accomplished in the first few minutes of the day, and just having that habit of being able to start checking down the list
Mm.
is it'll mean more to you than you think than just making your bed. But run and run hard, man. You only got one go around on this rock, so enjoy it.
That's right. Well, Andy, thank you so much for your authenticity and conversation and openness today. Thank you for being on the 5 a.m. podcast.
It's been a blessing. Thank you.
I've loved it. You've reminded us that this American dream isn't some historic relic, but it is really a living, breathing legacy that needs to be earned and protected by every single generation. So thank you, ladies and gentlemen. If you're listening to this podcast right now and you want to support a true family run, stand your ground American movement, I want you to do two things today. First, head over to American.com and look at the gear, the apparel. Maybe you need a new concealed carry jacket for the missus and that shiny little gun that she has that you got her for Mother's Day, and of course those safes to protect what you have built for your family. And then second, share this episode with a friend, and then of course follow Andy on his social media. Watch this legacy unfold in real time, and get ready for the upcoming albums that Andy has. So have a safe and memorable 4th of July weekend for those of you that are listening on that wonderful weekend. Remember, when we seize our days, we seize our futures. Please enjoy those sunrises and sunsets and all those beautiful adventures in between. I'm Michael Clausen, and I will see you on the next 5 a.m. podcast.
Thanks for watching the show. Just a reminder that you can get all of our resources, other episodes, and read our blog posts at 5ampodcast.com.